the consumer finance sector right now and question is very big in terms of the public debate. And we're hearing the finance minister talking about it, we're hearing the governor of the Bank of Canada, we're hearing all sorts of commentators, so it's important. And of course, one thing we hear about is the so-called debt-to-income ratio, which right now is sitting at about 155%, which is by Canadian standards quite high. We've seen it rising actually continuously for about 30 years. But also at this point in time, it seems high by international standards, certainly compared to the US and the UK, both markets that have been deleveraging pretty severely over the last couple of years. That number has been coming down. The Canadian one is still rising modestly. That's part of the basis for the concern. Where does that leave us in terms of going forward and in terms of what that means for the housing sector? I personally am not particularly fussed by that overall number. It's not a particularly high number when you sort of think of, you know, a typical borrower for mortgages. Most people who are new home buyer, who are recent home buyers have debt-to-income ratios which are much higher than 150%. I think it has a lot to do really just with the demographics, and really we're just starting to catch up with the demographics and the spreading out that we're starting to see. Traditionally, high borrowers have been in those age ranges from about 25 through to about 35 to 40. And now that's spreading out a little bit. People are living longer. Their productive lifespan is getting longer and longer. They're living and working longer. And all of that is contributing to the spreading out of the debt cycle. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Where does that leave us going forward in terms of the housing market? Well, we're told that interest rates are going to be pretty flat for the next 2, maybe 3 years. So there's not a huge risk that potentially overextended people are going to be running to risk. Also, housing prices have pretty much just flattened out. We haven't seen much of a change in housing prices now for about a year, and I suspect we'll see more of that. We'll see more flatness over the next year or so. Incomes are rising modestly, so I think probably this flash in the pan debt situation is going to, if anything, resolve itself.